At Oak Ridge, the guards saw an American soldier with the right badge. His officers saw a gifted technician, trusted to measure radiation inside one of the most secret facilities on Earth. His classmates saw a quiet man from Iowa who spoke English without a trace of a foreign accent. None of them saw Agent Delmar, the Soviet intelligence officer moving through the Manhattan Project with top-secret clearance. George Koval did not break into America's atomic program. The United States Army selected him, trained him, and placed him inside it. At Oak Ridge, his health physics assignment gave him access across a site where most workers knew only their own compartment. At Dayton, Ohio, he entered the project developing the polonium-based neutron initiator for the plutonium bomb. Then, before American investigators understood who he was, he sailed out of the country under his real name. When the Soviet Union detonated its first atomic bomb in 1949, Washington knew the nuclear monopoly had ended. What it did not publicly acknowledge was that one of the men who helped Moscow close the gap had been born in Sioux City, had served honorably in the U.S. Army, and had never needed a false American identity. The perfect Soviet cover was not an imitation. It was the truth. George Abramovich Koval was born in Iowa on December 25, 1913, to Jewish immigrants from the Russian Empire. He grew up in Sioux City, attended school there, and studied electrical engineering for a time at the University of Iowa. By every outward measure, his life belonged to the American Midwest. But his family maintained ties to left-wing Jewish organizations that promoted settlement in the Soviet Union, and the Great Depression made their American future look increasingly uncertain. In 1932, the Kovals left the United States. They hoped to build a new life in the Soviet Union, but instead of returning to Belarus, they were sent to the Jewish Autonomous Region in the Soviet Far East. They settled near Birobidzhan, close to the border with Manchuria. The promised socialist refuge was isolated, underdeveloped, and far removed from the Iowa streets George knew. Koval adapted. He improved his Russian, worked with machinery on a collective farm, and in 1934 entered the Mendeleev Institute of Chemical Technology in Moscow. He graduated with honors in 1939 and married a fellow student, Ludmila Ivanova. His combination of chemical training, American citizenship, native English, and cultural fluency made him unusually valuable to Soviet military intelligence. The GRU recruited him and assigned him the code name Delmar. The details of his training remain partly obscured, but the mission was clear: send an authentic American back to collect scientific and industrial intelligence. Koval did not have to manufacture a childhood or suppress an accent. He had already lived the biography a foreign operative would have struggled to fake. In October 1940, he arrived in San Francisco aboard a small tanker. Years later, he wrote that he simply passed through the control point with the captain and the captain's family. From there, he traveled to New York, where a GRU network operated behind the cover of the Raven Electric Company. According to later accounts, Koval became a senior member of that station and initially collected information related to chemical warfare. He worked under his real name. That decision reduced one kind of danger while creating another. A fabricated identity could collapse under investigation, but Koval's genuine birth records, schooling, and citizenship all led back to Iowa. The Soviet years were the part he concealed. To associates in New York, he presented himself as a native-born American with an ordinary past. On January 2, 1941, Koval registered for the draft. Raven Electric obtained a temporary occupational deferment, but it expired. On February 4, 1943, he was inducted into the United States Army. For most spies, military conscription would have destroyed an established operation. For Koval, it opened a route no Soviet planner could have guaranteed. After basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, the Army sent him to a specialized unit at the Citadel in South Carolina. His aptitude then carried him into the Army's specialized training program, created to educate technically promising soldiers. At the City College of New York, he studied electrical engineering beside younger servicemen who remembered him as calm, capable, and unusually mature. His competence was real. His classmates did not know that he already held a chemistry degree from Moscow, had a wife in the Soviet Union, and had been trained by the GRU. They saw a soldier who rarely appeared to struggle with technical work. The hidden education that should have raised questions instead made him look exceptional. In early 1944, the Army began dismantling the training program as combat units demanded more manpower. Most of Koval's classmates faced reassignment to the infantry. Koval and a small group of technically qualified soldiers were selected for the Special Engineer Detachment, part of the Manhattan Project. What began as an unwanted draft had placed a Soviet officer on the path to America's atomic secrets. By then, the Manhattan Project had become a vast network of laboratories, industrial plants, military posts, and universities. Its security depended heavily on compartmentalization. A worker refining uranium did not need to know how a bomb would be assembled. A chemist handling plutonium did not need to know the target. Keeping thousands of people focused on isolated tasks protected the larger design from any single leak. But compartmentalization creates exceptions. Safety personnel must cross boundaries because radiation does not respect an organizational chart. In August 1944, Koval arrived at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and became a health physics officer. His duty was to monitor radiation hazards in facilities working with materials for the bomb program. The assignment carried top-secret clearance and allowed him to enter areas unavailable to most personnel. He did not have unlimited knowledge of every Manhattan Project secret, but he had something nearly as useful: the ability to observe how separate pieces of the atomic enterprise connected. Oak Ridge was not one laboratory. It was an enormous wartime complex built to enrich uranium and support reactor and chemical work. Tens of thousands of people lived behind fences in a city that did not appear on ordinary maps. Workers showed badges, followed strict movement rules, and were warned not to discuss their assignments. Yet the system still had to trust those whose jobs required mobility. Koval's radiation work gave him legitimate reasons to inspect equipment, measure exposure, speak with technical staff, and move between facilities. His scientific education allowed him to understand what he saw. Moscow did not receive only isolated labels or rumors. Koval could report production processes, quantities, plant layouts, and the movement of nuclear materials in language Soviet specialists could use. One subject became especially important: polonium. Manhattan Project scientists needed a controlled burst of neutrons to help initiate the chain reaction in an implosion-type plutonium weapon. Their solution was a compact device combining polonium-210 and beryllium. When the bomb's implosion crushed the components together, alpha particles from the polonium interacted with beryllium and released neutrons at the critical moment. The component was small enough to disappear inside the center of a weapon, but its production required an entire secret chain. Reactors irradiated bismuth. Chemists separated intensely radioactive polonium. Specialists fabricated the neutron initiators and sent them to Los Alamos for assembly and testing. The material moved through multiple sites. Anyone able to follow that movement could begin reconstructing the purpose behind it. Koval reported on Oak Ridge's polonium work through Soviet contacts. Historical accounts describe information traveling by couriers, coded messages, and diplomatic channels. One crucial insight was that polonium associated with Oak Ridge was connected to Los Alamos. Klaus Fuchs, another Soviet spy, supplied Moscow with far more detailed information about bomb physics and design from inside Los Alamos. Koval's intelligence was different. It exposed production details and helped connect the industrial component to the weapon being built. Then the Army placed him closer to the initiator itself. On June 27, 1945, Koval was transferred to Dayton, Ohio. The Dayton project had grown inside repurposed buildings scattered through and around the city, including a former seminary and other properties that gave little outward sign of atomic work. Monsanto chemists and Manhattan Project personnel were separating and purifying polonium and producing initiators for implosion weapons. Koval again served in health physics. The danger of polonium contamination made radiation monitoring essential, so his position gave him broad access to the laboratories and processes. He arrived less than 3 weeks before the Trinity test in New Mexico and only weeks before the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On July 16, 1945, the Trinity device detonated successfully. The uranium bomb used over Hiroshima on August 6th relied on a different design. The plutonium weapon dropped on Nagasaki 3 days later used implosion and a polonium-beryllium initiator produced through the Dayton effort. Koval was not the scientist who designed that initiator, nor did he personally possess every secret of the atomic bomb. His value came from access to a technical bottleneck that few outsiders even knew existed. He continued passing information after Japan's surrender. A GRU report received in February 1946 included a description attributed to Koval of polonium manufacturing work. That documented flow of intelligence matters because later retellings often inflate the story into a single stolen blueprint. The reality was more methodical. Observations, production data, material connections, and engineering details accumulated until Soviet experts could combine them with intelligence from other sources and with their own research. The distinction does not make the betrayal smaller, it makes it more credible. The Soviet atomic program did not succeed because one spy delivered an entire bomb in a folder. Fuchs provided crucial weapon design information. Theodore Hall supplied additional Los Alamos intelligence. Other networks reported on uranium, plutonium, and American research. Koval contributed a rare view of Oak Ridge and Dayton, including the polonium initiator chain. Each source reduced uncertainty. Together, they allowed Moscow to avoid wrong turns and confirm that its own engineers were following a workable path. The United States understood that the Soviet Union would eventually build a bomb, but estimates placed the breakthrough later. A 1946 American intelligence assessment projected success sometime between 1950 and 1953. On August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union detonated RDS-1 at the Semipalatinsk test site in Kazakhstan. The plutonium implosion device closely followed the basic architecture of the American Fat Man design. Decades later, Russian military sources claimed that the initiator for RDS-1 had been prepared from a recipe supplied by Delmar. That claim is important, but it must be stated with its source attached. Historians continue to debate exactly how much time Koval's intelligence saved and how much later Russian accounts magnified individual heroes. What is established is that he penetrated both Oak Ridge and Dayton, reported on sensitive nuclear production, and escaped prosecution. His departure was not the desperate flight described in spy fiction. Koval was honorably discharged from the Army in 1946. He returned to New York and resumed his education at City College, receiving an electrical engineering degree cum laude on February 1, 1948. Months later, he obtained a passport for travel in Europe. In October, he sailed from the United States and never returned. There is no firm evidence that FBI agents were closing in on him at the moment he left. That uncertainty makes his escape more disturbing. He may have sensed growing danger as American counterintelligence investigated Soviet networks. Or he may simply have completed his mission and chosen the safest time to go home. Either way, he departed openly, years after entering the Manhattan Project under his own name. Only later did investigators reconstruct pieces of his hidden life. Former Army associates recalled FBI agents asking about Koval in the 1950s. The questions arrived after the man himself was beyond American reach. Public exposure was slower still. His case remained obscure while the Rosenbergs, Klaus Fuchs, and other atomic spies became central figures in Cold War history. Life in Moscow did not immediately resemble a hero's return. Koval's American background and the secrecy surrounding his GRU work complicated his effort to find a scientific position. An intelligence contact eventually helped him obtain work at the Mendeleev Institute. He earned an advanced degree and spent decades teaching chemistry, known to students as a reserved professor with unusual English pronunciation and an American past he rarely explained. Koval died in Moscow on January 31, 2006. On November 2, 2007, President Vladimir Putin posthumously awarded him the title Hero of the Russian Federation. The Kremlin identified him as the Soviet intelligence officer who penetrated American atomic facilities, producing enriched uranium, plutonium, and polonium, and credited his work with accelerating the Soviet bomb. The award finally made Agent Delmar visible, but it also turned intelligence history into national mythology. Russia emphasized the lone operative who defeated American security. American retellings emphasized the embarrassment of a spy walking freely through the Manhattan Project. Both versions contain truth, yet neither should erase the larger machinery around him. Koval succeeded because several systems aligned in his favor. His birth records proved he was American. The Army needed technical talent faster than investigators could examine every biography. The Soviet Union was formally an ally during most of his wartime service, while American counterintelligence concentrated heavily on German and Japanese threats. Military and civilian agencies did not always share information effectively, and his health physics duties required the very mobility that compartmentalization was designed to prevent. He was also disciplined. He avoided ideological speeches, used his real identity, performed his military duties well, and gave colleagues little reason to imagine a second allegiance. The badge did not merely open doors, it shaped how everyone interpreted the man carrying it. That is why George Koval still matters. Modern laboratories can record every file opened, every door entered, and every device connected to a network. But data cannot protect an institution if legitimate access is treated as proof of loyalty. The most dangerous insider may not hack a system or steal a truckload of documents. He may complete his assignments, earn excellent evaluations, and quietly assemble meaning from information that appears harmless in separate compartments. So where did the Manhattan Project fail? In granting Koval access, in failing to connect his Soviet past to his American identity, or in assuming that a trusted soldier could not serve another state? Tell us what you think in the comments. Subscribe to the Modern Ledger and continue with our next case from the hidden war for atomic power. Governments seal their secrets in vaults, but the Ledger remembers the people who carried them out.